So welcome, Adele. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me. I love this. So fun.
Yeah, this is so exciting. Welcome to the Good Mood podcast.
Oh, I love
And and so you are a master manifester. I just came up with a job title for you.
That's good. That's good to know. I would say I'm a master mindset coach and practitioner for sure. And I think, we'll talk all things manifestation, but I think that comes with understanding how to use your mindset, how to use your mind really as a tool that it is, that we don't learn how to use the mind as a tool as kids. So, and we'll talk all about that kind of stuff, but I'd say I'm a master in the mindset realm, and help people. Really, what is manifestation? It's just creating a life that you love, bringing into form the things that you really want. That's really what it means.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's like working from the ground up instead of, I think, if we think of like manifestation, I think what I've been exposed to was things like Abraham Hicks, where it was like,
Yes.
think positively or pretend that you already have what you have, but it wasn't really addressing the subconscious, more implicit beliefs that we would have, right? That make it almost impossible to just think positively.
100%. Totally. Well, so do you want to go right into
Jump
that?
right in. Yeah, let's go down. Jump in. Yeah.
So, people, when we talk manifestation, like I just like to talk about it as creation, because we are creative beings and we're always creating something, but we're often creating what we don't want to experience. And so part of it is understanding that nothing about creation is esoteric. So even like when you talk about Abraham Hicks and all that, I don't know his work that much, but what people get kind of into the sort of occult theories of manifestation, but really what manifestation is that whatever you think in your mind manifests in your external reality, because your thoughts are actually energy in motion. And when people really get present to the impact of, like Emerson said, man becomes what he thinks about all day long. And it couldn't be more true, because when you look at people and you say, I always say, and I think you saw this when we did the masterclass, and I talk more about it in other programs, like when you look at someone's external reality, like AKA their results or circumstances, it's actually a direct reflection into what they're thinking about in their secret thoughts. And so that, like, you could just pause on that for a while and let that sink in, because that could trigger people, because you're like, but I don't like my environment. But what I always say is that here's what's so beautiful about that is that you as a being, as a creative being, as a human being, you have the ability to choose. We talked about that in class, where we have a conscious mind, and the conscious mind gives us the ability to choose. No other species that we know of has the ability to choose. Other animals are just reactive in nature. They have like the fight or flight response. And human beings, with our conscious mind, the intellect, we have the ability to choose how we respond to situations. And so I always say to people, like, a great place to start, and how some people kind of find me and start working with me or do my courses, is they're like, I don't like the life I've created for myself. And so it kind of starts with that level of humility to say, okay, I got to take responsibility that I created this, but I also have the ability to shift that and pivot that and create what I really desire. Because that's what lights me up the most, is seeing people really create the life that they desire outside of the paradigm that they're raised with. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So it's like if somebody, one of the things that we talked about a lot in C.E.O. Blueprint that came up a lot was this money mindset. That's like a really good sort of segue into everything, because that's
oh my, is that something your viewers want to hear about?
We could, because it could be anything. Health is sometimes a pretty, it could be very esoteric, right? Because what is health? It's always changing. But money is this concrete currency we have that allows us, gives us power and energy in our lives, right? So
yes,
money is a tangible thing. So you can look at your bank account and see how much money you have, but it's hard to quantify your health, right? Or your relationship, or those kind of things, happiness, emotions.
That's a great way to distinguish it, actually. So here's the thing though, like, let's kind of go back a bit. So where does this all start? So it all starts with when you look back and you look at your childhood. When we all look back and look at our childhood, part of the work that I teach is called inner child therapy. So inner child therapy says that part of the human psyche, again, nothing esoteric, this is all part of like documented psychology and neuroscience, is we have something called an inner child. And your inner child is you between the ages of 0 and 7. It's a point in time, usually around the ages of 5 or 6, where we got locked into a certain identity. So when people say things like, I'm shy, or I'm this, or I'm that, and they say it like it's this fixed trait about themselves, the truth is it's just a habitual learned behavior, something that you learn in childhood. So I always say you cannot understand who you are without really deeply looking at how you were raised. And how you were raised by the people around you, whether it was your parents or your grandparents or teachers or mentors or coaches, it really had an impact on us as children, because between the ages of 0 and 7, we do not have a conscious mind. We learned that in the course. We don't have a conscious mind. So what does that mean? Well, children between the ages of 0 and 7, and this is really important that if people who are listening are moms, whenever I say this to moms, they're like, oh no, I'm screwing up my children. And I don't want you to hear it that way, because I actually want you to hear that if you learn to heal your own mindset and your own childhood wounds, then you actually don't repeat the cycle with your children. That's why I think the work is so important. But basically, we all have what I call childhood wounds, or false beliefs, or limiting beliefs, or I like to call them childhood contracts, things that we developed early on in life because of our environment, specifically being around our mom and dad. When we are 0 to 7, we don't have the ability to reject information, because the subconscious mind does not have the ability to reject. So everything going on around us got fixed into our subconscious mind. Why is this important? Well, we didn't only take on the ideas of our parents. So like if you look back as I'm even talking, you think about what it was like growing up with your parents. What was their relationship to money? What was their relationship to sex? What was their relationship to intimacy? Or did they come from a scarcity mindset? Were they abundant mindset? You got not only their beliefs, but their ways of being, like the way that they dealt with emotional reactions. So we learn, if you really think about it, and I think we talked about this, and I think I even brought this up in class with you, Talia, like think about how you know that this is a phone.
Right.
You know this is a phone because somebody told you this was a phone. Most of the meaning that we have to everything in life was given to us by somebody else. So we develop this identity, okay? I'm shy, I'm this, I might not be, I don't feel good enough, I feel insecure, imposter syndrome. All of these limiting beliefs or false beliefs that we have about ourselves, these narratives, developed from a very early age. And then we live in our adult reality, like I'm almost 40, and I've been doing this work for a really long time, and it never ends, because the deeper you go, the more you discover about yourself and realize you don't know anything.
Yeah.
Which is a real point of humility that people need to have. Like, oh, I've got it all figured out. No, it just keeps going.
Then there's just a big trigger that wallops you and you're like, whoa.
Exactly. Totally. And it's actually humbling to be like, I've been doing this for 20 years and like really as a student of it for so long. And even just this week, something that was totally a blind spot that I hadn't even seen came in again. So that's the profound beauty of the subconscious mind, is that the more you heal different aspects of yourself, the more it'll allow you to get, it'll feed you information insofar that it feels like you're safe, because the subconscious wants to keep you safe. So it won't, this explains why people can go through traumatic experiences like sexual abuse or violence or rape and forget about it.
Mm.
They didn't forget about it. Their subconscious mind is not allowing them to consciously understand it, because it feels like it would just kill them. So part of the subconscious mind is that the more you heal yourself and prove to yourself that you're safe and you can survive it, okay, the more your subconscious mind will feed you something else. And that's how we grow, we evolve. So as people are listening, they can start to think about, what are some of the beliefs I have about myself and my secret thoughts that I don't tell people? A lot of people are really insecure. A lot of people seek validation externally. I mean, let's be honest, who doesn't seek validation externally? We all want a pat on the back, like, good job, Talia. And I was saying this in one of my classes the other day. It's like, nobody is going to show up and validate you the way that you need to. You need to learn how to reparent yourself and validate yourself. And that's the power of the work, is to say, if I'm looking for something outside of myself to make me feel good, I have given power over to the external environment.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
When I learn to say, nobody is going to love me the way I can love myself, it's actually nobody's job
Mm.
or responsibility to love you the way that you're going to love yourself. If I learn how to, I call it a reparenting technique. Like if I learn how to heal, I think we did that a little bit in the first course. I learned to really see my inner child, like that little girl inside of me, who when I'm triggered, it's just a sign that she's feeling unsafe. And I go in and in a meditative state, and I learn how to heal that aspect of myself. I become one with that inner child. What I do is you heal the separation. Okay. And when you do that, you become more whole. And it's a very powerful process, because as you do it more and more, what ends up happening is you no longer feel like you need the external reality to validate who you are.
Mm.
And I feel like, I'm sure you can attest to this, especially women, like, and I would say actually a lot of men have insecurities and imposter syndrome. I think that shows up all through life. But, I even think for myself, like, I've become more comfortable in my skin because I love myself more than I ever did, and not in a cocky, conceited way, in a self-love kind of way. Like all of my flaws, all of the beautiful things, the ugly things, the embarrassing things, the things that, when you're a kid, you're like, I just want to be like everybody else. I was saying the other day to someone, I'm so glad I'm not like anybody else now, like, it's like, so this is the power of doing this inner work, this mindset work, is because as you feel and become more whole inside of yourself, as you start to feel worthy, as you start to feel good enough, as you start to feel like you don't need everybody else's approval, what do you think happens? Well, you start to behave differently in your everyday life.
Mm. And it can be very subtle too. Just
It's
small decisions you make. Mm-hmm.
totally usually very subtle, but it's an energetic shift that people feel, because people are, we're energetic beings. Everything in the universe is energy. That's just physics. So we're around, you're like this brown person, right? Or I feel really drawn to this person. You're drawn to people that are vibrating at a higher frequency. But how can you vibrate at a higher frequency? You have to change the frequency of your thoughts.
Mm.
So if all day long you're thinking, I'm not good enough, or this is hard, or life's a struggle, or that person's an asshole, or da da da, that's where you're vibrating low.
Mm-hmm.
If all day long you're thinking, I, like, as an example, when COVID hit back in, I don't even, March, it feels like 7 years ago, like a
I
dime,
know.
right?
Like,
I remember everybody was coming to me. That's kind of when I started doing my courses online, because I was like, people need help right now. They're struggling. They're not seeing the possibility. And my mindset, because I've trained it to be this way, AKA, please see the word trained in that. Like, wasn't born this way. I'm a student of this to really train myself to see the good. I went right away, instead of going all the things that's wrong, I started to say, what are all the opportunities here? How can I serve people? And in that moment, I was like, oh, here's the opportunity. I'm going to run my courses online, because I was running them in person before. And I was like, great. And the beautiful thing is, even with COVID as an example, like, we can look at all the wrong things going on, or we can think all the things in the world that are going wrong. But we talked about this in class, where everything is happening for our highest evolution and expansion, even if in the moment it doesn't feel like that, because the universe works on the principle of more life, which means more life for all. We're evolving as a species. So for me, I was like, that's so true, because as I started to run my courses online, I started to then reach people in Italy. I have a woman from Saudi Arabia, like things that would have never been possible if I was just doing it here in Toronto, right? So I don't know, I've just kind of segued off onto various things, but I wanted to bring it back to this one thing that you said, and then I want to hear, your perspective. But when it comes to money, it's actually no different than health. And I want people who are listening to this to hear this. Whether you believe that you have a little or a lot of money or health, it's all coming from the same mindset. It's called the lack mindset. And when you think about it, how were you raised to think about money? How were you raised to think about health? Was there abundance in your life growing up? Were there people around you who were healthy, or were they sick? That's what got ingrained into your conditioning. Like, notice, Talia, like, if you actually did a survey of all your patients who have health issues, I wonder what their bank accounts look like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It comes from a belief that there's not enough. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I actually saw this pattern emerging in two different kinds of patients. There's one type of patient who feels like they've made a mistake in their life that led to their health issues. Like almost they've sinned in some way, ate too much of something, and then the other that feels like the nutrients from their food is not getting into their body, or that this deficiency, this lack. And in Chinese medicine, we talk about excess deficiency as two of the main disease categories. And so it's interesting. Yeah, this like general baseline belief about the world will show up in money, health, relationships, career.
Think about it. If you believe if you were raised to believe there's not enough, like maybe you grew up in a family where there really wasn't enough, and the lens with which you see the world, literally the lens, because it's a filter. Like we all create our own experience of reality. Like we could go into a whole metaphysical conversation on what is reality, right?
Right.
Because it's true. I'm experiencing it this way. You're experiencing, what's the truth? We don't know. We'll never know.
Right.
But think about it this way, like my experience of my reality is always based on my beliefs. Okay. So if I believe that there is not enough, I will look for confirmation bias. You know what confirmation bias is? We confirm our bias. Why? Because if we didn't confirm our bias, we would be in cognitive dissonance, which would make us feel crazy. So the mind wants to feel safe. So if I believe, hey, there's not enough, then I'm going to scan for evidence. I'm going to literally scan my environment and look for evidence that there's not enough time. People who say I don't have enough money also deal with I don't have enough time. We all have the same 24 hours in the day. How do some people have all the time and you have no time, right? They don't have time. They don't have money. They don't value their health in the same way. Like it's a similar pattern that shows up no matter what it is, whether it's time, money, or health. And one of the things that's really important is for people to heal those beliefs about themselves and understand where they come from, because I truly believe that until you truly heal the paradigm is just a set of beliefs, like a habitual set of beliefs. Until you heal that, you're constantly going to be experiencing your reality the same way. You can see this with your patients, I'm sure. And for me, when I was, my first practice was in weight loss practice, and I brought CBT into weight loss because I always believed it's the mindset that matters the most. People know what to eat and they're not doing it anyway.
100%.
You know that. You give them an amazing protocol, but why don't they do it? They don't do it because they have some belief system that keeps them stuck. So this is why people will yo-yo diet. This is why people will start something, be fierce for 2 weeks and give up. Because if on some level they believe they're not worthy, if they believe there's never enough, if they believe there's something wrong with them, they need to validate that bias. This is how we stay in toxic relationships. This is how we stay in jobs that we don't like. This is how we abuse our bodies, even though we consciously, logically know I should be eating plants and more vegetables. Why are people still smoking cigarettes and eating fried food and drinking too much? So it's really powerful to understand that the thing that governs all of our behavior is our subconscious mind, because it's where all your habits and patterns are stored. So I think we talked about this when we were doing the class, where I said, your intellect has nothing to do with it. Because I've worked with some really intelligent people in my day, like on Bay Street, and like a lot of CEOs and stuff. And they would come to me and go like, I know, I know I need to eat healthy or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, but you're not doing it. So knowing has nothing to do with it. People think they intellectualize their habits, but they can't, because your subconscious mind does not operate on the intellectual realm. It operates on pattern recognition. So it's going to do the pattern that you know to do.
Yeah, you're used to feeling a certain way. And like you said, there's a cognitive dissonance if you're not feeling that way. So it might not even come from a thought that you have, but there's just a behavior that starts manifesting, where you start ordering KFC again, even though you've lost 50 pounds and feel great. Something feels wrong subconsciously.
Totally. So that's a great point. I actually wrote about that on Instagram, I think yesterday, because I talked about that the other day. That's actually called the sabotaging strategy. So that's really interesting. And I'm glad you brought that up. So when people start, when they start making progress, whether it's towards their health or their career or like anything, They lost 30 pounds and then they go binge on KFC. Why? It's not conscious. It doesn't make any sense. It's because their subconscious mind wants to keep them safe and the same. That's the primary role of the subconscious mind, is to keep you safe and procreation. Those are the two functions. So when you're going towards an achievement or like a higher version of yourself, your subconscious mind is kind of like trying to hold you back because it doesn't think it's safe. It's the unknown. So if you lost 30 pounds, it'll literally swoop in with some kind of sabotaging strategy, go get KFC, and you go do that. Mm-hmm. That's what happens to people. So one of the things I usually outline in my courses is like, I get people really clear on how do you sabotage yourself? Because once you know how you sabotage yourself, what happens when it shows up is it's no longer a blind spot. So for example, if you realize for you, Talia, like I sabotage myself by procrastinating, okay? It's a big one for people. They're like, I'm going to go vacuum instead of writing this content, or, you know, I really got to like clean the floors in this exact moment.
Yeah, but my house is very clean though.
Yeah, exactly. My house is, I could eat off the floor, but I really got to go clean it. So you got to get, when you get present to how you sabotage yourself, and then it shows up, you have then the intellectual part of you will go, oh, wait a minute. Is this my sabotaging strategy? Like, I'll give you some other examples. You know, I think I shared this the other day. I don't remember where, but I said that one of the ways when I first started doing this work, I had to figure out my sabotaging strategy. And again, it's a blind spot for people. So it's not obvious. Like other people could see it. You can't see it usually. So I was like, what is it? What is it? What is it? And then I recognized it's getting sick. When I was a kid, I would get sick every time we had to go on vacation or every time we were about to do something. And as I got older, whenever I would be doing something like up-leveling, like whether it was creating a new course or speaking in front of a group of people or putting myself out there, right? My subconscious mind will literally manifest sickness. Like I would get the flu, or I would get a stomach ache, or I would, you know, think about that. Mm-hmm. And it was a way to literally keep me where I was. So then what started to happen is as I started to work through that, heal that part of myself and remind myself that it was safe to grow, because that's ultimately what you tell your subconscious, it's okay, it's safe for me to do this. Not only did I stop getting sick, but even if I did catch a little symptom of something, I would just not pay attention to it because I saw it for the truth, which is, oh, this is my sabotaging strategy. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's really important. Mm-hmm. Some other ways that people sabotage themselves is procrastination is huge. They get overwhelmed or anxious. Think about that. If you're like, do you know people that get into overwhelm?
Definitely. Yeah.
And then it stops them from it gives them permission to get off the hook. They're like, oh, I'm too overwhelmed. I'm not going to do anything. Right. Mm-hmm. Other people get defensive, righteous, kind of like, I'm right, you're wrong. Like there's all sorts of ingenious ways your subconscious mind will do that. So I think for people that are listening, as I'm talking, like even thinking for themselves, like, what do I do as a pattern behavior when I'm making progress in an area of my life? How do I sabotage? We all have a sabotaging strategy. It's like literally a built-in technology of the subconscious mind to keep you safe. Mm-hmm. Do you know what yours is?
I definitely have procrastination. I do have the like, it's not specifically KFC, but I do have that sort of like KFC thing where there's a bit of a feeling like I'm going to, like, it really comes down to like when you start fragmenting a lot of beliefs at once, there's this sensation like, I don't know what's up and what's down and whether the sky is blue, because these deep things that were running your life start to dissolve. And that can be extremely scary. I think, so when that happens really quickly, it can be like, whoa, like, I need to go back to KFC or whatever that thing is, because I need to feel like I can kind of like put my feet on the ground again, you know? I don't know if you noticed that in your clients, like,
oh my God.
People, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh my, totally. What you're explaining is, it's exactly right. You said everything starts to, when you start to dissolve or start to get to the core of the truths about certain things about yourself, right? Or like some core beliefs or core wounds, and it comes up. I always say growth is painful. It really can be uncomfortable to grow. but suffering is optional. I always say, like, we as humans choose to bring suffering into it. It doesn't have to be that way, but some level of growth is always uncomfortable. And so what happens to people is that, this is really important that people listen to this. People value ease over growth. That's like a value conflict that people have. They think that success is easy, having a perfect physical health is easy. Somehow down the road, they thought that they learned that it's easy. It's easy, okay? But we value ease over discomfort. So what happens is, the minute we get uncomfortable doing something, we want to go right back down to ease and safety and security and ultimately control. So what can you control? The food you put in your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
It's all rooted back into control. Like, if I can control, I always say people are subconsciously always trying to control their level of growth. So yeah, in my courses, like, it could be confronting for people at some times to be like, wow, I didn't see this about myself. And then if they don't want to see it, they'll go and resort quickly back to their old paradigm. But that's also why we know that it takes 90 days of consistent practice to change a belief and paradigm. That's why I always say to people in my work, that's why I have like 3 levels of courses, because if people just do a little bit, what's likely is they revert right back to where they were, because they're not conditioning their mind. That's why I say it's habitual. You have to be in the habit of working on your mindset. Like, something I said I said this to someone the other day, that not only do I teach my courses, but I'm a student of it. Like, I probably study 2 to 3 hours a day, like, just on my own. And when I think about it, I think, people sometimes think, oh, I'm going to do this one thing, or I'm going to go see Talia for a few things and I'm going to be healed. It's like, no, it requires consistency over time. It actually requires 90 days to change a habit, 21 days to start to change a habit, 90 days to create a whole new belief and habit. So for people who are, really looking at, there are things in my life I need to change, you have to sort of commit to yourself. Like, you've got to give yourself a 90-day runway, and then another 90 days, and then another night. It's like it. But if you think, oh, I'm going to go see, I was talking about that with Dr. Jordan too on her podcast. Like, people think health should cost $300 to get better. It's like, because you value ease.
Right.
It's not going to cost you $300 to get healthy. It costs you thousands of dollars to get unhealthy. Why would it cost you $300 to get healthy?
Yeah, even to fix one small thing in my car is not $300. And there's an answer to that. I mean, the car is supposed to be a certain way, and when it stops being a certain way, you just fix it.
Totally.
And that's still like $900. So,
but think about that mindset, right? Like, people that come to you for being radically honest, like, and if people are listening, this is about radical honesty, not with coming from judgment of self, but coming really from trying to understand that if you think that it's going to cost, if you think you don't need to spend money on your health or personal development, you have to ask yourself why. You spent a lot of money getting unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't you?
Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah. Well, and what did it cost you to be unhealthy is another question. It's hard to quantify, but it's like, all those hours of work that you weren't as efficient, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. How,
Totally. There's a complete, there is a cost. But the other thing, that just reminded me to say is, or the thought trip that I wanted to go on at that is, I talked about this with Dr. Jordan too the other day, and with Michelle Paris. Like, we talk a lot about how, as leaders, and when I say leaders, I don't just mean like you're a leader in an organization. You're either a leader in your house, if you're a mother, or if you're a parent, or if you're a leader in an organization, or if you're a leader because you're a practitioner, whoever you, like, everybody's a leader in some way. And when you're a leader, you have to invest, you have to have this mindset, this growth mindset of, like, if I don't invest in myself, how can I expect other people to invest in me? Mm. It's so true. Mm-hmm. Because if you think that, so this is, one of my mentors used to say this to me. So when I first started working with him, I didn't have I didn't have the money in my bank account to afford to work with him. Let's put it that way. Okay. That was my experience of money. And he said to me, well, if you don't invest in yourself, you're never going to learn how to, like, because he was helping me with mastering money. And he said, well, here's a perfect example of where people get stuck. They say, I can't afford it. But then if they don't invest the money to learn how, they're never going to learn how.
Right.
So I always say the decision needs to come first. You need to make the decision and then the money shows up after. Think about any time you decided to do something, going on a vacation, buying a car. You didn't have to know all the ways it was going to work out. You just made the decision. Same thing with personal growth and with health. It's like you need to decide that it matters to you, and then everything all the resources you need show up. So it was so true, because when I first started investing with my coach, I couldn't afford it technically. But what's so funny is in doing that, it's afforded me to learn how to master generating and manifesting anything that I need and want in my life. So when you think about it that way, it's like, how can you afford not to?
Mm-hmm. Mm. Right.
How can you afford not to? Like, there's two states in life. If you really boil it down, you're either changing or you're staying the same.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it. What's the other option?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like,
yeah. You're changing backwards, but that's still changing.
Well, yeah, actually energy is either moving forward or backward. You never really stay the same. Status quo would actually mean that the universal life force would just stop, and it doesn't. So the law of vibration decrees that energy is always moving. So you actually are moving backwards or moving forwards. But let's call it you're either growing or not.
Right.
So I always say to people, even if if you have this growth mindset, if you commit to yourself and you say, I'm committed that I'm going to put one foot in the other, even if I'm failing forwards, even if sometimes it feels like it's not working, as long as I have the mindset that I'm going to keep investing in myself until I create the life that I want. I think that's the mindset of a successful person. They don't stop until they reach the goal, whether it's a health goal, a personal goal, or a love goal, or a happiness goal. It's like, how can you even consider stopping? What's the other option?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about people that don't know what they want? They haven't locked it down. Maybe they know that they don't, because I see that with mental health a lot, where people are not happy with where they're at, but it's hard for them to define where they want to be.
Yeah.
You ask that miracle question, like, tomorrow, if someone waved a magic wand, you woke up and all your problems were gone, what would your day look like?
Yeah.
And that question, there's a resistance sometimes to answering, because if they're like, well, I would go for a walk in nature, you're like, go for it now. But I think, when people don't sort of see what is possible, how do you help them see that? Yeah.
Brilliant question. So that's a twofold answer. One, if you're dealing with mental health, like depression or anxiety, we know, especially with CBT and depression, like we know that people that are depressed, and I don't mean like having a bad day, I'm talking about clinical depression. They see the world through instead of rose-colored glasses, like foggy glasses. So their perception of reality is skewed. So for people who are depressed, it's a very different shift. It's actually getting them to do things that bring them joy, like going for a walk in nature, because that's a big step for someone who's dealing with depression or anxiety. Like, they can't see the bigger scale of what they want until they start to give themselves permission to want the little things.
Yeah.
And I actually think that's true of everybody. Even in the course I taught yesterday, like, someone asked, like, I'm not really sure what I want. And I said, that's very normal, because as children, think about this, Talia, when you're growing up with your parents, depending on who your parents were and how they raised you, for most of us, it wasn't really okay to want what we wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So,
you're like, oh, I want a pony. And
and
it's
they're
like,
like,
that's
you
not,
get a pony.
not within the realm of possibility. But then you're like, but there are people who have ponies. Some people have like 20 ponies.
Because children don't have the conscious mind yet. So their intellect hasn't formed. So they're nothing but dreamers. That's what I'm talking about. The inner child is actually a state of wonder, awe, and possibility. I can tell my 4-year-old son, we're going to the moon tomorrow, and he'll be like, amazing, I'm packing my bags. Like, anything is possible. But we then become jaded and ignorant as we get older, and we tell people it's not possible to do things that are actually very possible. Mm-hmm. So part of it is, as children, especially if you grew up with like strict parents or parents that were dealing with their own mental health issues, who the heck knows? Back then, people didn't talk about it. Yeah. We are not given permission to want what we want. We are actually told, be a good girl, be a good boy, stop being so creative. Like, it stifled us. So then you ask a 40-year-old, what do you want? And they're looking at you like you have 7 heads, because they're like, what do you mean? No one's ever asked me what I wanted. So for people that I work with that have a hard time answering that question, I usually say, okay, let's start with the small stuff. What do you want today? Mm-hmm. And that's a great example. I love that example of going for a walk in nature, because that's like my daily, I have to do that every day. That's my non-negotiable. Mm-hmm. There are days that I wake up that, like, especially Fridays, I usually try to take like most of the day off, and I'll say, like, what do I feel like doing today? and I just go with where I want to go. I need to have some space in my calendar to give it's actually giving myself permission to want what I want, okay? Without needing to ask anybody. And I do that because we have to rewire the paradigm of needing permission or seeking authority elsewhere. It's actually giving myself space, even if it's just one day a week. And I think this is a great practice for people, especially if you're super doer, if you're like a perfectionist, if you need to have your calendar filled from the minute you open your eyes to go to bed. One of the greatest gifts that you can give yourself is space. And when you get space, it gives you creativity and all sorts of beautiful things emerge. I started to become a lot more successful and happy in my life when I actually started to work less and give myself space, because I actually started to rewire the belief that I need to work hard to be successful. That's a very big paradigm a lot of us have. So one day a week, I give myself permission to just wake up that day and like I have to, whatever I have to do in the morning. And then the later part of the day, I say, if, you know, I'm just going to go and do whatever it is that I feel like doing. So that might be go for a walk in nature and listen to a podcast, or go for a coffee, or meet a friend. I think it's important for people to start small, especially if the question is hard for them to answer.
Mm-hmm. It's actually really beautiful. And I like the idea of space because you're tapping back into the inner child. I think that book, The Artist's Way, talks about that. Like, have a child day where you just go and let yourself dream and
totally
get back to that instead of just
your inner child.
Yeah, like, because we think like the inner child is full of pain, right? But it also is full of all the wonder and dreaming. And
it's totally, so your inner child is twofold. There's the wounded aspect of the inner child. We all have core wounds from childhood. It doesn't matter even if you grew up in a beautiful family. We've all, through the eyes of a child, we experience some level of separation from parent. That's really what it comes down to, is abandonment. Okay.
Yeah.
And so there's the wounded part of us that feels unsafe or unloved or unworthy. And then there's the part of the inner child in its healthy state is full of joy, wonder, and curiosity. So exactly. So I love that idea of having a child, like a child day. It's about joy and wonder and possibility. It's where all your creativity comes from. It's where really we in inner child therapy, we say that it's the true essence of your being. Your true essence of your being. If you think back to your 6-year-old self in your happiest state, that's who you are. And then what happens over time is, with conditioning and other people's expectations of you and fear of not fitting in, we've all dealt with that. I mean, on so many different levels, I think humanity right now is having like a massive shift. I think we talked about Venus being in retrograde or whatever. The energy in the last few weeks has been super intense in general. I think with COVID and the US elections, like there's been so much polarization of people. And I think that we're having a huge kind of paradigm shift right now in the world. But part of it is, I think, when I intuitively feel into it, what I feel is we're starting to reclaim a little bit of, because we're also not as social as we used to be. Part of it is it's forcing us to go inward in a different way, like reclaiming our independence, reclaiming who it is that we really are. I think it's also giving people permission to stop doing the things that make them miserable, because like life, they're starting to get kind of more present to their mortality. Like things are changing for people. Like COVID, I think in some ways has been a big miracle, because people are starting to dial into what they really want, what they don't want, all those kinds of things. So I don't even know where I went with that, but I do believe that there's a deep sense of when if you look back in history, anytime there was like upheaval or any kind of revolution or anything, like there was a breakthrough that happened for civilization after that. And I think if people can stay anchored in, there must be good in this, like there has to be, it's a universal law. Okay. Then where's the good?
Mm-hmm.
You know, where's the good? For some people, we joke like, with one of my friends, like we were saying how we're home so much more with our kids and our spouses and stuff. And it's like, oh, I'm getting to know my family. Like people are getting to know the people they live with in a different way than they were before, when they were running around like chickens with their head cut off, doing all their tasks.
Yeah. Well, that's actually was my first thought when you said a lot of people reaching out to you beginning of COVID, because the distractions are gone. So all of these core beliefs are emerging and the triggers are showing up, right? Because we can't control our environment in the same way we used to.
Yes. The distractions totally, like, and I think also when I always say like pain is a sign of growth, and it's always darkest before the dawn and all those different metaphors, but it's true. Like you cannot really have a breakthrough without going through some pain and discomfort. And I think that really circles back to what you said before. It's why most people want to stay the same, or they'll stay in the ignorance. When I say ignorant, I don't mean like you're ignorant to other people. Like ignorance just means a lack of awareness. Like they'll stay in I'd rather just stay here because it's too painful to actually go deeper. But what they don't understand is that they're not giving themselves a real experience of life and to see the truth of who they are. I think one of the mantras I have for some of my groups, like my more senior groups, I say that you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. It's a real mindset shift. Like stop leaning away from discomfort and learn to lean into it. It's kind of no different than, this is the perfect example. I don't know if you do acupuncture or anything like that. Like the first, or like if you're going for a massage and you have a sore spot, it's like you press it and it really hurts, but if you press it long enough, the pain goes away and relaxes the muscle. That's exactly what it feels like with mindset or with emotions that might feel too intense for people. It's like if you stop resisting it and you just allow the pressure point to ease, your whole body relaxes. But most people are fighting, they're resisting something. They're resisting feeling something or being something or doing something or being told what to, like everyone's resisting something at some point. And I always say when we can stop resisting something, it'll just sort of like melt away.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We talk about that in mindfulness or just in really trauma work, is like emotions last for 90 seconds and they rise, the crescendo, and then they fall. But the resistance renews the emotional state because it creates new emotions about holding and bracing and more tension, and it just prolongs the pain, suffering.
I love that.
But it's part of the way that we subconsciously protect, right? Like we'll hold, like everyone has 10 shoulders.
Yeah, it's true.
Ready to fight. Yeah.
Totally. And I love that idea of a crescendo because it's so true, because emotions are energy in motion. They're always transmuting. They're always shifting and changing and going from different frequencies. And so the wave of the emotion is a wave. It's called the law of rhythm. Everything follows the law of rhythm in life. Like everything. If you look at the waves or a tide, if you look at the menstrual cycle, everything is the law of rhythm. But people get fixated on they need to feel this way. Does anybody be throughout the day or happy all the time or sad? No, but we, like you said, we double down on resisting feeling sad, as opposed to just allowing yourself to feel sad until that sadness turns into something else, which it will, because it's how the emotions work through the body. So but again, this all requires a few things: awareness, mastery, consistency. Like, it's very nice for people to listen to this conversation and go, yeah, really great. But then it's like, what's the actions you're going to take to change your life? Because awareness, insight is nothing unless you're going to do something about it.
Right.
Isn't that true?
Yeah. And awareness can be really a tricky stage, because if all you have is awareness, it's easy to just like shrivel back into your shell, because you're like, oh my gosh, this is what I have to change. And this is all the things that aren't going well. Like, okay, let's go back to like Netflix.
Yeah. But I think it's important that we kind of like, for me, it's an integrity piece, that it's important that people who are listening, who are like, okay, they're getting a new awareness or an insight is popping up, like write it down. But also, it's not, I always say, like, information is power, but nothing until it's applied. So for me, I'm a big believer in, like, people just need to take action. It doesn't have to be my course. It could be anything working with you, but they need to take action and actually allow themselves to be in the space of someone who's a master at the thing that they're doing, so that they can, basically what it is it's having someone who's walked that path before you take you down the path that you don't know. That's it. And if you're just going to sit and listen to podcasts all day and not do anything about it, then you just become someone who's aware without making any changes in your life. Right. And I think it's important for people. I'm a very big action person, because it's like, I always say, like, people can get into what I call transformational arrogance. My fiance actually calls it transformational arrogance, because they're like, oh, I've listened to all these podcasts and I've done all these things. And it's like, but you haven't done anything. Your reality hasn't changed.
Right.
So saying I've done the course, but you didn't do anything with the course, is not doing the course. Going to see Talia for one session, hoping that you're healed, it's got to be for people who really are committed to making the change. ask yourself, do I value ease over discomfort? Just be really honest with yourself. Am I willing to shift that belief? Like, am I willing to give myself permission to be a little bit uncomfortable for as long as it takes to make the shift? Because the beauty and the freedom on the other side is profound. Isn't it?
Yeah. Well, essentially, like what I'm thinking of and what we're essentially talking about is jumping into an abyss. And I love talking about the abyss. And so it's a terrifying thing, right? You don't know. You're like, I'm going to die. And you're basically there saying, I've already jumped. And I can tell you there's a soft landing. And not just that, on the other end is an entirely new life for you. So just trust me.
Yeah.
But you need to jump. You can't just like look at it and listen to podcasts about it.
Oh, and I think that there's almost diminishing returns at a certain point for people if you don't. Because what you do is you got to remember, right? Everything's pattern repetition and pattern recognition at the subconscious mind. So if you have a pattern, and I'm sure there's people listening to this that will identify with this, is like the people that are constantly listening to podcasts or taking courses, but they think that that's changing them, but really it's not. So they kind of the addiction to that piece. But I think what's important is to break the pattern. You actually then have to start to do something with that work. And then you got to ask yourself, what about me? Is there a part of me, if in radical honesty, if you're being super honest with yourself, you don't have to share this with anybody. This is like your secret thoughts. If you had to ask yourself, am I addicted to the drama or the suffering? How many people do we know are addicted to it? We're addicted to the dopamine hit that we get when on some level we're feeling bad.
Yeah.
I think some people are addicted to feeling bad. I know for sure I had to work through some of my own stuff where I don't think I was addicted to feeling bad, but in some ways, it was like I would create drama in my life as a way to anchor into safety or certainty. And I see a lot of people do that. Because when I always say to people that it's actually success could be easy, like health could be easy. What if it was easy? What if it wasn't always a struggle? Why is it always a struggle presenting as a struggle for you? Because you have a belief that it has to be hard. That makes sense?
I think we see that in relationships a lot, where it's like it doesn't feel like a relationship or like love or real unless there's some sort of crisis that you're working through.
That's where for me it was always in relationship. It was like if it wasn't a crisis, there wasn't like if there wasn't that tension or that whatever, it wasn't love or something, right? Where do we get those concepts? We get it from childhood.
Yeah.
So I think people really need to get really honest with themselves and say, like, am I really serious about changing this goal? Like, this pattern or this behavior? Do I really want to lose weight? Do I really want to get healthy? Do I really want to be successful? Do I really want what I say I want? Or do I think I want it? Like, what do I really want and why do I really want it? That's really important for people to ask themselves, because let's say you want, I don't know, better health. And then you ask the person, well, why do you want it? They have to get really emotionally attached to why they want it. Otherwise they won't make the change. The why, I always say your why has to be powerful, because in the face of all the challenges that may show up, if you're anchored into a deeper meaning for yourself, then that will override your need to feel safe in every given moment.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's like the hero's journey. You have a reason to push on. Yeah. And I like
totally
this
hero's journey. I love that. Yeah.
I like this, like the teleology of like examining what is the cause of this, like where you were saying when you were getting sick all the time, and like what is the function of me getting sick? Like what is that allowing for me or giving to me, as a way to examine sort of some of those core beliefs of like, what is procrastinating giving to me? What is being unhealthy, or maybe even having anxiety? What is anxiety delivering to me? That's keeping me in safety.
That's exactly right. It serves a function. Everything serves a function in the body, right? And so when people go into anxiety or they go into sickness, at some point in their childhood, that did provide, there was a function to it. So either they got love from a parent, or they got acceptance, or they felt safe. But here's the thing: when you really look at it now, you're no longer a child, unless you're a child listening to this. You're an adult. But you have to understand that most of the decisions you make are coming from your child self, right? Like most of the decisions and views of the world were shaped very young. So now you're an adult and you have the ability to choose And that means that you can actually choose to change those beliefs and choose to change your narrative about yourself and choose to create the reality that you want to create. Because you're either creating and you're in control of it, or you're at the mercy of it. That's how most people operate. They're either victims to their circumstances or they're creating the reality. And back to what I said at the beginning of the podcast is you're always in creation mode, because human beings are always creating by virtue of our thinking, feeling, and acting. And you're either creating the desired result or the undesired result. Think about that in your life. Like, you're either really creating what you want or what you don't want. Mm-hmm. So you're either creating money or debt. You're either creating health or unhealth. You're either creating love or loneliness. Mm-hmm. Choose. Mm-hmm. It's actually that it's not easy, but it is simple. Like, and you do need to understand how to rework the mind and all that. And that's why I teach this stuff. It's not enough to just like understand it intellectually. Like, nothing changes at the intellectual level. You have to shift the subconscious programming, and that happens over time. But really, when you really boil it down, it's that simple. You're creating what you want or what you don't want in any given moment. Choose.
Mm-hmm. And like you said at the beginning, examine your reality to understand what your thoughts are. Yeah.
Yes.
So sort of radical honesty, do an evaluation of what's going on below the hood.
Totally. And here's what I will leave people off with this piece that's really, really, really important. My invitation to you, if you're listening to this or watching it, is listen to it again, because like, I think with this kind of information, it could be like drinking from a fire hose, and people need to disseminate it slowly and integrate it. So I always think like, listen to it a couple times. And I invite you to don't come from judgment of self. This is really important that people hear this. Don't go into, oh shit, there's something wrong with me. Oh God. If you go into judgment, blame, guilt, and shame, you keep the story, you stay stuck in your story. Mm-hmm. You come from, isn't this interesting? I like to call it coming from curiosity. Isn't it interesting? Why is this happening to me? Why do I keep having this experience? Why do I keep creating the same relationship over again? Why do I keep yo-yo dieting? Asking different questions will lead to different answers. If you go into shame, blame, and judgment, it's a way that you stay in control and you stay the victim, and you basically stay locked in your story. So one of the things I tell people as we move through my courses is there is no room for judgment. Look at it like a scientist would be observing data. Like, honestly, look at the data. Just go, this is my reality in my finances and otherwise. Isn't this interesting? Why might I be having this experience? Mm-hmm. That's really important, because anytime we go into judgment of ourselves or others, we're allowing ourselves to be right and in control. What did I say about stopping strategies? That's an example of when you go into judgment of yourself or other people, it's literally a way that your subconscious mind goes, you're staying right. I'm not going to allow any other information to come in.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm going to affirm all my biases.
Yeah. I'm going to be righteous and defensive about it, So yeah, this is so awesome. I really, really love this conversation.
Great job. Yeah, let's talk about, so you've alluded to, you've talked about your program, and you've said like, okay, let's tell people how they can take action.
Yeah, awesome. So I have a program that Talia, you just completed. It's called the CEO Blueprint Masterclass Series. It's a 4-week program that's basically the baseline fundamentals of my work, where you learn about your core wounds and starting to understand reparenting techniques and, really understanding your childhood and how it informs some of your beliefs. It's a very powerful program, and it's the base program of my curriculum, which is a 3-part series, but everybody has to start at the foundation state. So my next course is actually starting December 2nd. It's a 4-week program. Early bird tickets are still on sale. It's $297. It's so affordable. It's basically free $99. And I did it that way because through COVID, I really just wanted to help as many people as possible. So there's like a very little barrier to entry for people. I know you're going to link the site in the show notes for people to buy the tickets. It starts December 2nd. It's a really beautiful, and then it's a beautiful community of people that come together to grow and learn together. So it's my baseline program, and I absolutely love it. So I'd love to have anyone who's interested join.
Yeah. So we'll put the link in the show notes, and it's a 4-week program, right? So with coaching calls and group calls, and it's very good. So I personally recommend it. Yes. So
much.
Very great. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's a way that, and like you said, listen to the podcast a few times, sort of let it percolate, and then And then this is a great way to take action. You can,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Totally. You know, and that will be a victory in and of itself for people if they just listen to this and take an action and you know, click the link and register. That's already, like I always say, the course starts the minute someone registers, because it starts to tell your subconscious mind, it shows your mind that you're doing something different.
Mm-hmm.
So now the pattern, there's not that same pattern recognition. You're doing something else, which then has your mind go to different things. So it's really powerful to see how people start to shift once they start to just kind of take action and what it really does is it tells your subconscious mind that you're worthy of it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I would say the same for any investing in your health. Like, you're worthy of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the first step, right? Especially if it's a pattern interruption, like you said.
Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm. It's like, this is not something I normally would ever do. It's like,
therefore you should do it.
Hit that switch. Yeah, exactly. Jump into the abyss.
Opposite day, like Seinfeld, like literally do the opposite, you know? That's kind of where that comes from.
That's Michael Singer, wasn't it the his book? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, where he was just like, I just stopped listening to that voice because I figured it was wrong, and all these crazy things started to emerge for him.
To do the opposite is exactly that's exactly it. He goes deep into, I mean, I love Michael Singer. He's definitely someone that's inspired some of my work, but it's very much like really like understanding that your reality starts at the level of your thinking, all of which you have control over. So it's really powerful.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Any last thoughts, Adele, before we wrap up? Like, what do you want to leave everyone off with?
I want to leave people off with that listening to this should have them feel hopeful and inspired, that they don't have to be the victims of their circumstances, that it starts with personal responsibility and saying, I got myself here, okay? Not from blame or judgment, but if I got myself here, I can get myself out. And that's powerful for people. We don't have to suffer. Life is not meant to be hard and full of suffering, okay? Life will have pain, but suffering is optional, and you have the power and the ability to choose the nature of your reality. Okay. So I just want to leave people with that, because I think it's really profound work. And I think in the world right now, it's needed more than ever. The more that we can each heal ourselves, the more that we can truly heal the world. That is how it works. Right. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you for having me. This was such a great conversation.
Thank you. Thanks, Adele. Thanks so much for joining. Yeah, this was awesome. As usual, I love listening to your podcast appearances and everything you have to say on the topic. You're so great. So thank you so much.
Okay, bye.
Bye.